People have been talking about Batman versus Superman, Team Captain America versus Team Iron Man. Well, today we're going to do the comedy side of things. Sketch versus improv comedy. Cue the music. Welcome, everyone, to the Entertainment Buffet podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Prosek. Just to get all the plugs out of the way, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes so that you don't miss any of our new episodes coming out, and it also gives us an opportunity with that review for new people to find us. I'm also trying to make this podcast available on as many podcast listening devices as possible, such as Podbean, Stitcher, Blueberry. I keep forgetting that Blueberry is actually a thing, but it is. Also, just generally catch Entertainment Buffet on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or just our regular website, entertainmentbuffet.com. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. Plug. And, so let's introduce our guest, Cassie Ahiers, everyone.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Cassie. So, why don't you tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. I'm a Minnesota native. I've been in Chicago for 7 years. I do a lot of sketch comedy. I direct. I do improv. And I just wrote a musical, so
wow.
I dabble in the comedies.
Many comedy hats on Cassie here. So where I first found you was a little sketch show on the YouTube called Lake Effect, where you guys did 6 episodes?
Yeah, 6.
6 where you guys would do usually a couple sketches each one. And one thing I noticed was you guys had a large cast. You had different types of comedy with the sketches and great production value, and I was like, oh god, I gotta see if Entertainment Buffet and these guys can collaborate on something. And that's where actually at our first live show back in January, you guys performed not 1 but 3 sketches with us.
Oh, it was a blast.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting to see you guys. Like I said, since you have multiple members in your crew, you can do many different avenues, opposed to some improv troupes or sketch groups who are kind of smaller. You guys have a very diverse set of talent with you guys. So, what projects are you currently up to? You said a musical and...
Yeah, so I wrote, actually my boyfriend and I, Anthony, we wrote a musical comedy, dark comedy, 1 act, this January, and that opened up in April. So by the time this airs, it will be closed, but...
Sad.
Yeah, we had a great run with that, and that's something I'm very proud of that I'm working on right now. And then after that, I'm just working, my friend Molly is doing a solo show I'm directed another sketch show, and I'm really excited because the same group that brought you Lake Effect is going to be doing a 22-minute pilot this summer. We're going to film it and then hopefully try to get it into New York Film and Television Fest.
Wow, that is awesome.
Follow me on Facebook, Cassie Ahiers, and just check for my updates.
Sounds good.
But you know what I will plug? I'm in an all-female improv group called Dang Judy Dench, and we do various shows around the city, at the Crowd and other places. But we got a show in the Chicago Improv Festival on May 5th at 7:30 p.m. in the Beat Lounge at Second City.
Awesome. So yeah, go check out her and the rest of her troupe there at the awesome Second City. So before we get to the meat of the podcast, I would like to always do an LOL of the week, which could be a picture, a meme, video, story, whatever. So I'll just kind of kick things off mine. Like it has been recently, there's just been a lot of memes that have been getting me. Cassie, I'm not sure if you're a Star Wars fan at all. But there's this meme going around that after Star Wars Force Awakens, where there's a lightsaber that's calling to Rey, there's one that because it's Luke's and before him it was Anakin's, it was like this lightsaber that killed 30 orphans, 30 children, it calls to you. And I don't know why. It's the simplicity of, it took something that is supposed to be, so hopeful, like, oh, the lightsaber's calling to her, and it's reminding you, hey, remember
this is
that?
Fucked up.
Remember that thing that slaughtered children?
I killed them all.
Exactly. It's so simple. And like I said with my meme on the last episode with the Batman Riddler one, like sometimes the simplest of memes is just funnier than anything going around on the internet right now. So Cassie, do you have yourself an LOL of the week?
I do. I love that this is a segment in which we describe things that the viewers at home cannot see. Which is hilarious. So this is a video. Maybe I can play a part of it just for effect. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we can see how it goes.
But it's one of those classic scare prank videos where somebody
Awesome.
runs up on you with a camera in their hand and they scare you. But this one is a young man, and upon screaming, he just changes it into chandelier. So I just love that.
That's awesome.
He recovers insanely well, and who doesn't like Sia?
He realizes that he gets scared in the situation and turns it into a musical number.
That's how I like to deal with things.
Oh, maybe that's why you had the musical project. You were just like, oh, I have this funny idea. Fuck it, let's make it a musical.
I'm scared. I'll just make it.
Yeah. So let's dive into the main topic of this episode, which is sketch comedy versus improv comedy. So I'll kind of start off with just my little experience with both. I don't have as much improv experience. I took levels A and B at Second City here in Chicago, but decided to not keep pursuing it, not because I didn't like it, but just because I was focusing on actually graduating from Columbia and didn't want to neglect my actual classes that I was taking. And I think I just always gravitated away from improv because I'm not as good at improv on stage as I am when I'm recording web shows or videos. I think I'm just more of the improviser that can just come up with little things, but we're recording it, so if it's not good, we can get rid of it. Sure. Opposed to on the spot. Yeah. So I definitely have more experience when it comes to sketch. I've written sketches for Entertainment Buffet and in classes at Columbia and such. So Cassie, if you want to just say a little bit of your experience with both these avenues of comedy.
Improv is definitely the thing that got me into comedy, so that's always got a kind of like a soft spot in my heart. But I started improv when I was in Minnesota in high school, and then I moved to Chicago, and I majored in theater directing at Columbia, so I was like, oh, I'm going to do like all this artsy theater. I love Shakespeare. I was like, I'm going to be such a legitimate director. But then I got on an improv team here, and that kind of just took over my life. And the whole comedy scene in Chicago swept me up, and I was like, fuck basic theater. Let's make some shit up. Yeah. So that kind of stole me. But then it's interesting because I feel like a lot of improvisers, if you do it long enough, so now I've been doing it for like 7 or 8 years, people go on funny roller coasters kind of with that, or like love, hate, or I don't know, maybe I just did. So if you had talked to me like a year ago, I was like, fuck improv. Like, improv is so dumb. I'm so over it. But now in the last maybe 6 months, I've gotten into improv like so much more than I ever had. And I feel like things finally, after all this time, have started clicking, and like it's the most fun. And I don't know if that's just because I do other things now, so it has less stakes in my life. Mm-hmm. And now I'm teaching improv a lot, so I think that's also one of the reasons why I'm getting better at improv.
Oh, where do you teach improv?
So I teach at the Revival.
Okay.
And I've taught kids improv for a couple of years with some summer camps, but now I'm starting to teach adults, and I feel like that is just like opening the way I play in my position in the improv world. So that's like very exciting to me, because right now I'm not doing improv for any kind of like career advancement. I'm just doing it to like have a blast, connect with people, and laugh. And like turns out that's the key to being good at improv, is not giving a fuck about it.
See, I think the reason I wanted to try improv at Second City was because I do stand up, and I wanted to kind of study it in a way for not just like say I get a heckler, but if something happens to where I forget my material, or all of a sudden they give me more time or something, like I could just be able to adapt and, roll with the punches and keep going on to a different tangent, or be able to recoup. I figured it was a way to just make myself better as a comedic performer and stand-up, or just with my sketches, is kind of opening my mind to improv. Now, sure. You also have sketch experience, obviously, with Lake Effect.
Yeah, and I actually, so Well, I did the comedy studies semester at Second City, and that kind of got me into sketch in the first place. And that's really where I learned to use improv to develop sketch material. So then I really got on that jam for a while. I was like, fuck improv as like a performance art form. Like, hell yeah, improv as a tool to create written work. So then that's kind of like what I got in that groove. And then this last year, I got into the directing program at Second City. So they only take like 6 people, and that's just an intensive year-long program to study directing for sketch comedy, which is like such a weird niche thing.
Yeah.
But like, I'm lucky enough that I get to study that for a year. So that's very exciting to me too.
No, you brought up a great point that I was going to bring up at some point too, which is I've discussed with various friends like yourself that are in improv and sketch or stand-up, where they're kind of studying it all, where, like you said, improv can be a great tool to think of a sketch. And it, like you said, you don't need to necessarily use it on stage to come up with scenes, but you could just do it. You get a group of friends together, just improv at your apartment, and then all of a sudden you'll come up with this scene that you're like, wait, let's take that idea and see if we can develop that into a sketch. So I think that's why maybe I always gravitated more towards sketch, was because you're taking the best ideas of improv and kind of
polishing them.
Yes, refining them to where they're the funniest that they can be. With Lake Effect, you took on more the director-producer role than you did performing. Now, you said you guys would kind of improv the scenes. Now, how much improving did you do? Did you guys just have a session where you all came together, you improved a bunch of stuff, and then you took out the best ideas? Or how did you narrow down to like these 6 episodes, like, all right, these are the ones we want to do?
Yeah, it kind of worked. So I have a big background, like I said, in Second City style sketch comedy theater, right? And I like just assistant directed the main stage of Second City, so this is like a very specific process, and that kind of has had a big effect on the way I do things. So the way the rehearsals were structured is we would meet, and for probably 5, 6, I don't know, maybe even longer, like 8 weeks, every week the group would come in and there'd be a new prompt. So like this week, let's everybody bring in a premise for a group scene. And the majority of them were just pitches, so then we would come in and they'd be like, okay, this is a scene where we're in a hibachi grill, and these 2 people are couples, and this is their attitude. And then we would see what happened. So then after we watched that, I would sit there and I'd be like, oh, cool. Okay, so it seems like this is the game we found in the scene, like as an outside opinion. I saw that there's this game, like let's hit it harder. Let's play the game now where we're very passively, aggressively, like in love with each other. And now let's try it again with that add-on. And then we would just go and discuss it. And then, so we would do that for like weeks. So then at the end of that, we had like 40, 50 sketches.
Wow.
So then from that, we're like, let's kill our babies. Like, we decided, we wanted it to be an ensemble piece. So balance was like the biggest thing. We wanted everybody to have like equal stage time. So already you can start being like, well, we know we want to do this scene and Caitlin's going to be the star of this scene. So we're going to have to kill one of the other scenes that Caitlin's in because it's like somebody else's turn to be the lead in this scene. And then it just kind of came together, and then we paired them with these little short cold opens. We kind of had this land of an idea that this is all in a similar world, so we started to try to figure out like characters that lived in a similar world, and I don't know, we got there. Then we would just keep re-improvising, then you come back, so then eventually you get down to the beats. So then we're like, okay, cool, what do we need to establish at the top of the scene? What's important for them to know? Where we are, who we are. So you tell them that. So we wouldn't ever say, like, these are the lines. It would just be, like, make sure at the top of the scene, Caitlin, you're going to establish that you're at a hibachi grill, and Harrison's going to establish that you've never met before. Okay. And then we're going to do some talk. We don't know what that's going to be like, but then we're going to get to the climax where Harrison's going to scream at everybody. So the cool thing is, like, every time you do it, it's different, and you're actually playing off of each other, but you know, like, once we hit this beat, we're on to a new section.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's weird, like the way you were describing that was almost exactly like how me and a friend from high school, Charlie Duber, we did back when like YouTube was kind of still getting off the ground. This is way back, like 2010, when I was finishing up high school. We loved the sketch internet show Jake and Amir, or the web series, I guess you could call it. But they were almost like mini sketches, and you can tell that was very heavily improv between the two. And so, like, what we would do is, like, what you said, where it's like, all right, this is where we're starting, this is where we're going to end, and, like, maybe here's a middle part. but then we'll fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
And that's where, like I said, it was nice to kind of improv and come up with stuff, but it's weird. I think when I started writing more in school is where I kind of was gravitating away from improv as much and wanted to, like, okay, I want to write and rewrite and then bounce off with other people ideas to how do I get the funniest thing.
Yeah.
And then, like, that's what we're going to shoot. Now, like, I would allow my actors to improv on set, but I would always be like, all right, we're going to get at least a couple takes like this. Now, you guys, like you said, you didn't really write much at all.
Yeah. I think it's a couple things, though, is, like, that's just because I think a big part of the reason it works for us is that is just how the majority of this ensemble's brain works. Mm-hmm. It's hard. It's unless, like, some of them are very talented improvisers. And that's not to say, or they're just the type of improviser that approaches improv in a grounded and acting way. And I think that's different than some people improvise where they're all about the game or they're about the funny. But I feel like that's not as usable in a writing place. Because if you're just going to go for punchlines, well, sitting down at a piece of paper and coming up with 10 different alternatives for a punchline is going to be way more successful than trying to think of them on top of your feet.
Yeah.
But we use the improv, I think, more from, like, a character standpoint to really understand what this character is like, and then we'll have a discussion that's like, well, what's the funniest place to put this character, like, location to put them in. So I don't know. So maybe it's the people, and, like, you also just, the process is hard. Like, you just have to get the right process down, and it doesn't work with everybody, and you have to have somebody who's got a certain, like, I don't know. I think for some reason our Lake Effect group worked out is that we all just kind of fit into a nice puzzle. Mm-hmm. We all kind of balanced each other out in a way and all feel different. We're like a little sports team. You know, so we had, like, someone who's defensive and somebody who is good at finishing and putting those soccer balls in the goal. I played soccer. That's the only reference I can make. But you get the idea. So, like, yeah, I don't know. I think writing... Or I think the improv route is wonderful, but I also think it has to be kind of the right setup and perfect storm for it.
Do you feel like that, like, bogs you down by trying to remember these lines specifically opposed to just kind of winging it?
Well, when you, I don't know, a couple of things on that. It's interesting because we don't write it down, but after you've done it, we'll do it so many times that it will essentially become verbatim. So I think that kind of happens naturally. And I don't know. I don't feel bogged down by a script too much. I think it's fun. It's a fun change. Like, I don't get asked to do many scripted things, and when I do, it's, like, very exciting for me. So to me, it's just a nice change. I don't know. I don't necessarily have opinion one way or the other. I think when creating something as an ensemble, it's much easier to create it without a script. So if I'm doing a sketch show and one of my actors hands me a script, I'm like, I don't even want to look at the words on paper. I just want you to present it to me, and I'm going to tell you what I observe. Because the audience is never going to see it on paper. Like, it's just a matter of how it's perceived. So that's, so I think as an ensemble, it's better to do it collaboratively in improv. But I think if it's, like, you and one other person, like, writing's awesome. Like, yeah. I'm so excited to get more into writing. So I think... It's not that I think that's a better process, that's just happened to be the process that, like, worked for us.
That's one thing that I noticed when I lived in Chicago and started seeing more live shows is the ensemble portion. There are some improvisers out there that they have two-person teams, and not that they're all not funny. Yeah. For me, as an audience member, I would be watching, and then so many scenes would end up just the two people talking at each other.
Sure.
Opposed to, like you said, where you have, like, 5, 6, 7 different people. You'll have 3 people in this scene, then you'll have 2, and then you have that many more people knowing, like, all right, this scene's really not working, we're going to cut away.
Yeah.
When there's only 2 of them... You have to hope that one of them knows that this scene's not working. Yeah. But like you said, if there's 2 of you in your group, there's 4 or 5 of you one of you will, like, you know what, the crowd isn't feeling this one. We're gonna cut to the next one.
Yeah. That's what I love about improv is, like, this concept that we're not gonna bring into the scene like a cathedral. We're gonna each bring a brick, and brick by brick, we're gonna add until we make this weird fucked up cathedral. So that's, like, the amazing thing is, like, when someone enters the room and they're, like, clearly 80 years old and they're, like, using a walker, and then, like, another student will come on and be like, yo, what's up, Tony? Happy 18th birthday. Now you've got, like, an 18-year-old who's got, like, such a bad, like, physicality that he's, like, needs a walker. Like, that scene is so much more interesting than this, like, dope grandma character you had, like, lined up.
Exactly.
So to me, that's, like, the kind of the magic of of improv. I think it's harder, and I think with an ensemble, it's definitely difficult with like 8 people. Like the more people you have, it is like a lot of cooks in the kitchen sometimes. But I also think you come up with more unique and kind of like strange mashes of ideas. Yeah. Like a mashed potato of ideas.
So, like, one thing I brought up was kind of one of the negatives of improv. Yeah. Do you have any negative shows or maybe a scene that you did or maybe any just negative experiences that you're like, man, you know, sometimes it just, like you said, you're like, sometimes fuck improv.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of different ways to have a bad improv set. I think lately the thing that's just been, like, guiding me is just... I don't know, I found just more of a freedom on stage and just an openness and fun and play. It's pretty silly, but I feel like it took me like 7 years to just fully like play and have fun on stage. And I thought I was, but now I realize like, no, I'm actually doing that. So I think like I've been on whole teams where I feel like I never really like reached my potential or I just made like safe, boring choices. To me, that's the worst improv, and that's like so much improv you'll see across the city is people doing very good technical improv, saying yes and doing all the rules, but not actually like finding the play in it.
Sometimes dabbled in making too safe of choices. Do you remember maybe an instance where, like you said, the easy goal in that other scene that we gave an example of, you were like, all right, I'm going to be this cool, you know, sassy, mouthy 80-year-old grandma, or I could be this, or like, do you remember maybe instances?
Yeah, well, let me... So I'll tell you about the worst improv set that awesome. I can recall, because that sounds like more interesting.
Yeah.
So I was on a college improv team called Drop in Science. They're still around, but this was back in like 2000. This is probably 2009, 2010. And we were all baby improvisers, and a lot of us actually ended up being in Irving or that Lake Effect group. So we did a show. And one of our performers, Harrison, he was a baby. He was a freshman, and he had lived in Texas his whole life. And he was just very, like, he wasn't woke. Like, he was a very nice guy and not, he was definitely, like, an ally to women and people, but he, like, just didn't get, like, how the modern, like, liberal world worked. Mm-hmm. So, like, very early on into the set, which, by the way, was at a college improv tournament at noon. So it was, like, an improv set at noon, God. Which is already, like, a horrible position to be in. So we're performing for like probably a dozen people at noon, and the show's already not going very well. It's very quiet. No one likes what we're doing. And so there's this scene taking place where like this dad is yelling at his kids for like sneaking out late, and he gestures to this girl who was playing like a 10-year-old girl, and he said, yeah, last night was horrible when he snuck out. Karen got raped. And he just drops not even a rape joke. He just drops a rape reference, like says a character got raped, like right away in the scene. And the room changes instantly. Like everyone's just like, and again, it's like noon. It's not like drunk people. It's just like everyone's like, that's so fucked up.
Yeah.
So then this is what made it worse is like, again, we were new improvisers and we were like, you gotta say yes and. Like there's no wrong choices. We gotta support ideas to make it right.
And you were the Karen that he said...
No.
Okay.
So then what happened was we started doing like tag outs, and I came in and I was like, I rape love you. Like we tried to make rape love into a thing where we just replaced like love with rape love. Like we tried to give it a new definition. But, like, this did not go over well. So we did, like, 4... So there's multiple scenes after the initial rape scene where people are like, I rape love you. Don't leave me. You were my first rape love. Like, where we just put the word rape in front of love, like, to give it a new definition. But it didn't work. Like, people still don't like the word rape, even if you put it next to the word love.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. And this was for a competition, and we did not advance to the next round because we made the whole set about rape. So, any new improvisers at home, that's an easy thing to avoid.
avoid rape.
Don't do rape in your show.
You guys doing it on stage and trying to turn rape funny, like I could never do that.
I don't think anyone can do that.
I would have just been like, so does anyone else have a suggestion?
Yeah, well,
I heard waffles.
In hindsight, probably would have been much better to just disregard that in some capacity.
Yeah. So now obviously we've talked a lot about Lake Effect, but you guys also do sketch with Irving or with Dang Judi Dench, you guys also do sketch on stage.
Yeah.
Do you have maybe your favorite or your least favorite experience as far as maybe a sketch for example, you've worked on and maybe it worked somewhere else, but then this night that crowd was dying, like, or any situations like that?
Let me think. I feel like there's gotta be a lot, probably. But I also like take joy. I love bombing. I think it's so. I don't know. I like getting a reaction that isn't laughter from an audience. So like, it's a shock or something. But I also think it's so funny when you go up there and you will do like a set or a show and just bomb for the whole time, because it's like so absurd that these people had to sit through it and just hate what you're doing. So I did a show called Queefer Madness. Back in the day, I was a performer, and it was a whole show about female stoners. So it was sketch comedy catered towards high people, but also we were all women, and it was kind of like just a commentary on that culture. But we did a scene where the bit of the scene was just that we all had really bad camel toes. We all wore these like super tight spandex leggings, and we would just hike them up like really hard into our vaginas. So we had like very in your face camel toes, and then it would get more ridiculous. Like the women at the end had like things stuffed in there to make the camel toe look like so absurd. Super high art show here. But one night, I'm on stage with my friend, and I look over, and she would start the scene like doing yoga, and then she'd turn around and reveal a camel toe, right? So you'd see us like from behind. So she was like her butt to the audience, bending over, and I look, and her tights, her leggings had like split. So there was just a huge hole like in her asshole, showing her underwear before a very tasteful camel toe scene.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't even.
Now I'm like, okay, I guess that doesn't make much of a difference. It was a pretty like trashy scene to begin with.
But I would not have known how to react as the other person, or if I was that person.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't.
Because you're like, how do you exactly? You can't really stop it when you're in it, but you're also like trying to tell your friend not to show their butthole to the audience.
Because the crowd's probably like, is this part of it?
Exactly. And it's a very hard thing to top, because if you start with butthole, it's like, well, just the shape of a pubic mound under a pair of pants is actually like less funny, you know?
Yeah.
Or you want to heighten it.
Yeah.
But it's hard to heighten off a butthole. These are things.
Two buttholes? I mean.
Yeah. Damn it, you're right. I guess the end of that just tore my own pants.
That's the only thing I could think of, but like that's not.
What I should have done.
That's not necessarily better. So if you guys want to check out on YouTube our Entertainment Buffet live show, we have all the clips, almost all of them. We're just getting to the end of them. One of your 3 sketches that you guys did with Irving was that you were a band that just came in. It was like the first one one of the first ones we posted, and you brought up not necessarily going for laughter, but just a moment. And I remember one, and it was you actually in particular, which is why I'm bringing this up. Was the do you want to kind of explain what the sketch was before I get to it?
So this is a sketch in recent history that, I don't know, it probably didn't land that hard. But it was just this idea that we were like a band. We had him introduce us as like a fake band name, and it was this idea that we had like just gotten off our tour bus and we were running late. So we like all ran on with these like dumb instruments and took off our coats.
Like a banjo.
Yeah, and, it was like none of it was gonna go together, and the bit was just that we were setting up, and that by the time we finally got set up to play the song, that our time would be done and we'd be pulled. So it was just like us. It was very hilarious. Yeah. There was not much dialogue, and it was just us setting up to do a gig, which is really not that funny. But.
And see, well, at first, the audience was kind of confused because they thought you were an actual band coming. Yeah. So that's where like it's already starting off. But the moment that I'm specifically getting to was, like you said, you keep interrupting because so-and-so, well, where's Tyler? You know, he doesn't have his harmonica. Yeah. And then the part I'm getting to was you're like, oh, wait, we have merch. And you run to the back to grab a board that has fake merch on it. And you come out and you're holding it. And then Caitlin says, you know, we have merch if anyone wants to buy it. And then you fell with the board because I don't mean this in a bad way, but you're a little bit shorter, and there was this huge board, and like, you know, you fell, and everyone's like, "Oh shit!" And like, what was funny was I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, did she actually fall? So that you actually hear in the video, like, there's kind of like a gasp of the audience.
That's what's funny. We thought it was a fun idea because we wanted to trick the audience, but then we didn't think we'd actually trick them, and it was kind of confusing. Like, that's why I don't think we got that much laughter, because people were genuinely just trying to figure out what was happening. Yeah. Which I kind of love too, because I just feel like we pranked them a little bit.
It's very Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, it was very like anti-humor. So then in rehearsal, we were just fucking around with it, and I had that big board. It didn't have merch on it at that point, but I kept pretending it was crushing me. Yeah. And we all thought this was like just funny that like this person would be crushed by the merch board. But then when I did it on stage, there was no laughter. There was just sounds of concern that I was hurt. And I was like, oh, this is like... But
I think what kind of got like a laugh or so later after people got it was when you got up, you're like, I got it. You know? Because, you know, your other castmates are trying to, you know, like help you with it, and then you're just like, I got it, okay, I got it. Like, and then I think that's where they kind of got the like, okay. Now when it comes to sketch, we were just talking about, for example, like this one you did with Irving. Now, do you have any, just like I said, the Split Tights one, that was sketch or improv?
That was sketch.
Okay.
Believe it or not. We wrote that.
Have you ever had like an instance where with a sketch that you had, it was all planned out, all the beats, you know, like I said, maybe the funny ending, all that, but maybe it was getting laughs in areas you didn't suspect, or perhaps you were getting laughs in the beginning, but then you're getting towards the end, big joke, and then like that one didn't stick, like anything like that where it's laughs in just places you didn't think would be getting laughter?
My friend, I was in a sketch show called My Chicago Valentine. Yeah, it was like a Valentine's show, right? So like a show about love. And my friend wrote me this sketch where it was like a young teen heartthrobs like back at the house for the first time and like, oh, my parents aren't home, like this kind of scene. And he just like, he told me, he's like, I just wanted to write you something like totally vulgar. So he wrote me this like gross ass scene where I'm just like, I'm on my period, like it's gonna be like the red wedding in there, and just like gross shit. I reveal I have a tail. Like, it's just gross. Like, I just talk about giving blowjobs, like using a lot of teeth and how my tongue is like sandpaper. So just like nasty, dumb shit. And it was like so dumb on paper, and we were like, I don't know if anyone is gonna like this. But that one like slayed. Like, people in the audience loved hearing me just describe like horrific, gross detail, like my body and like sexual.
Because you set up that, you know, your character was sort of like this sweet, innocent girl.
Yeah.
And then the joke is obviously that you say the most absurd, ridiculous, grotesque.
Yeah, things. And they were all such weird, specific things. And I think, like, if you don't know me, like you said, like, I don't think I look intimidating, or, like, I don't know, I'm just, like, a Midwestern, like, short lady. And I look young for my age. So, like, I think it was just very unexpected. So that's funny, too, is, like, you forget, like, people's perceptions of you. Because if you know me, I, like, swear and I'm gross and all these things. So then when people, like, saw me in my little, like, show dress, like, saying horrible things, apparently that was a hit. But the lake effect thing has been interesting just because I'll ask people, like, what their favorite scenes are. And, like, I know what my favorite scenes are, what I think's the most well-written or the best performed. But then you get, like, all these different mix of answers. Or, like, my family, like, loves... Like, the first episode is all about a girl having diarrhea. And, like, my family loves that one. That's their favorite. And they just, like... It's very the Ayers family to be in the, like, the poop jokes. But then, like, there's one called Cheddar Kiki Biscuit. And it's just about these, like, gross drug, like, kids from the suburbs and a drug deal that goes on. And to me, I think it's, like, so funny because I feel like I know those characters. But my parents were like, that one's just sad. Like, that one just depressed me because these kids are, like, have sad lives. Yeah. And I was like, oh, like, you just don't... Well, it's not like, oh, it's so smart you don't get it. But it's mostly just like, oh, like, this is a kind of a generational thing. Or, like, you don't know these people. So why would you find it funny? Like, it's kind of a character study. And
this isn't even when I made some sketches recently. It was more when I was kind of getting Entertainment Buffet started, which, like, my first two that I did, one was called Dr. Doctor, where the scene is, it's so stupid, his name is doctor, and he's a doctor, so it's doctor. And, you know, the other person's just like, you know, is that like your real name? Like kind of laughing at him. He said, yes, it's Dutch. And like, I don't know why him proclaiming, like, it was mainly Daniel Ott, the performer, just when he declared, like, yes, it's Dutch. Like, I found that funny, but like anytime I'd watch it, like you said, with a family member or someone, like that was one of those jokes that like just went over everyone's head. And then as we started getting towards the end of the sketch, whereas like, you know, the doctor's trying to be all pal with him, avoiding giving him these test results. And then he's like, you know, just give me the test results. Meanwhile, the patient's all like, is it skin cancer? Is it this? Is it no? And then, what is it then? It's skin cancer, you know? And like, there were some people that, like I said, it was kind of supposed to be a build to this. And then people were like, oh, like that's kind of, you know, it's a little dark. I was like, what? No, like there's a build, and you know, it's like, look at these performances that really took this average script and made it funny.
Yeah.
But then I wrote this other one called Communal Writer's Block, where it's just 5 people who are coming up with shitty ideas that cannot come up with a sketch.
Yes.
And it's like, at the time, you know, it's like, this is funny. I had some funny people involved, but then it got kind of botched up in editing and shooting and problems like that, to where it came out, I was like, this is gonna be bad. But then, like you said, my parents were like, oh, I really liked that one.
Yeah.
I was like, but you don't even what? Like the one that just got probably one of my least favorite projects.
Yeah.
That's the one you love.
It's so interesting. It's
That's
crazy.
the one that you'll send to your coworkers,
yes.
or you know, like, look what my son's up to.
I know.
Gosh.
That's the weird thing about doing it for film. I feel like you're right. You can shine it up so much more, but then it's like, it's just hard to know. How do you know if you get a list of 10 jokes? Like, I might think one's funny, but I'm also a comedian, so my like sense of these things is like very kind of out. Or I see a lot of comedy, you know. Mm-hmm. So for me, like, I don't think Big Bang Theory is funny at all.
God, no.
But that's the funniest show on television right now to the majority of America.
God.
So it's like, my point of view is like,
that's,
you know,
see,
you
like that's
reach.
a whole thing I learned in TV. Like, you know why that is? Because like America's stupid. No, it's
well, yeah, but it's like accessible.
It's
you know?
because older people just watch CBS and NBC and ABC because they don't think there are any more channels. They don't understand.
So when they hear your great skin cancer joke, they're like, oh, you know, that's a little too edgy for me. Because they don't ever see anything edgy. Like, they're watching very safe comedy.
They're watching Two and a Half Men and Big Bang Theory with canned laughter.
Yeah. So it's like, how do you know? That's why it's funny because you're like, the film is more kind of crafted and shined up. But at the same time, it's like, improv and sketch for stage is great because the audience lets you know right away if it's working. If it doesn't work, you ditch it and you try something new. Or if you're killing it and destroying, then you just keep doing the same thing over and over until they stop laughing at it. Like, it's very easy to know that because they give you that immediate feedback.
I think that's kind of why I've steered away. Like, I was thinking about getting some of my written sketches performed live at the Entertainment Buffet live show, but I was just worried. I was like, is this better for film or is this better on stage?
Yeah.
And because I have zero experience with sketch live on stage, I just didn't know like how do I take that gamble? Where it's like this sketch that, like I said, I think is funny and I think is this, but then it could just get crickets on stage.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. So it's kind of like the pros and the cons of both improv. Like improv, like you said, you can kind of realize it and get out of it. But sketch, you have this plan, and you're kind of like, all right, well, this isn't working, but we have to finish it.
Yeah.
You can't just someone run across and end the sketch.
Or you can sleep on it, and the next day, like, yeah. I don't know, because that's the thing, is improv, it's great that you're getting this information in the moment, but if you don't recognize it, or you have to be very on it to, like, notice what's working. Because sometimes you think you're killing it in improv, but the audience really is not having it, or whatever.
Well, that's why with my stand-up, like, even if it's not, like, professionally recorded, like, I'll always make sure I record at least the audio with my phone, because, like, I cannot tell when I'm up there. And I think that's why, like, with improv or, like, sketch on stage, I probably wouldn't be able to tell.
Sure.
I'd probably think, oh yeah, that got a big laugh. Yeah. But then like you actually listen to it later and you're like, oh, it really didn't. There was just one guy that really loved it. There was one guy that got a big kick.
Oh, my dad.
Yeah. One guy that got a big kick out of all these, sandpaper tongue blowjob jokes.
Yeah.
But then everyone else is like, ugh. So as we're kind of coming to the end of our improv versus sketch conversation, Cassie, is there really any other sketches that were just your favorite that really stuck out, whether it was live or with Lake Effect or anything like that?
Sure. And it was fun because my boyfriend played the opposite role, so that was pretty fun. He was Batman and I was Catwoman. And there was we did this Valentine's show and then it got picked up again for another Valentine's romance show. So whatever, these are all very love themed. So it was Batman and Catwoman and we had full costumes on. And it was this really sexually tense scene, right? Where old school Batman and Catwoman are just talking to each other. And then we went into this really highly choreographed fight choreography. We brought someone in to train us. So we did this whole fight scene between us, and then it ended with a kiss and then a slap, and I knocked him out. And then he's lying on the floor and he's oh, ow, 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 ow. And he takes his mask off and I'm oh honey, your nose, you have a meeting in the morning. So it was just all this elaborate role play between a nice Midwestern couple. But with a very highly choreographed fight scene in the middle of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But so yeah, this is we're wrapping up. Talked about the goods, the bads of improv and sketch. We kind of see how you need improv for sketch, but you need sketch for improv. They're kind of together, but sort of. It's kind of a personal opinion. We sort of side on the way of sketch, but that's kind of because Cassie's more of a director, I'm more of a writer. We like to prep stuff a little more, but. We'll kind of go to our final segment of the podcast, which is I Hate People. Cassie, I'm not sure if you heard this, but basically what we do is it's a brief second in the podcast where we get to just vent angrily about people we deal with in our customer service jobs that we may have had or just on the street. So mine, I'm a teller at a bank, and this one woman, there's this old woman who swears I shorted her 10 cents. She was furious. And this is a week after this transaction. She called and she's like, you shorted me 10 cents. And I wanted to deposit this. I was like, okay. I pull up the image of her transaction, which it was this. The 10 cents was still with her.
Yeah.
She's like, no. But my check register says this. I was like, okay, one, why are you still using a check register? Yeah. Everything's online.
I don't even know what that is.
I've never used one because it's all online. You just look at the transactions. Yeah. You're like, this is what happened.
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you need to balance it? And I have an image of a deposit slip that you signed and wrote yourself. And you're like, no, but my check register says this.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I want to see this. She's furious. I was like, okay. So we printed it for her. And then she shows up. She looks at it. And she's like, I have to deposit 10 cents because someone made a mistake. So I did the deposit for her. And then she's looking at the image more, and she just goes, well, I guess I made a mistake. But she doesn't say sorry. But this person, she is so, stubborn that she...
Yes.
I suppose I made a mistake.
At least she owned up to it.
But she's still she should have said sorry.
I know.
Those
people are horrible.
I overreacted. And what's funny is...
And it's 10 cents.
Okay, 10 cents.
Obviously that means a lot to her, but still, that's splitting hairs.
Guess how much is in her account?
How much?
$30,000.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
I was like, oh, poor lady, she's retired.
There are some people at the bank that, obviously I can't say names. There are some people that, every cent or dollar matters because they're so close to zero all the time, and they're living a paycheck to paycheck, or they're servers and they're living tip to tip, and this. And
this lady just didn't have anything going on that day and needed to start some drama.
10 cents? How much did it cost you to drive to the bank to look at this image that if you had online banking, you could have pulled up yourself? Oh god, so that's another one of my bank stories that just fuck this person. But Cassie, do you have an I hate people?
Let me think about my I hate people. So I teach I teach improv to adults and kids, but I teach a 10:30 improv class to 6 to 8-year-olds, which is pretty impossible to teach those children improv.
God help you.
Yeah. So, and I only get paid from 10:30 to 11:30. It's just an hour. It's great. It's awesome. But I only get paid for that hour. So I got to work early to have a meeting with another teacher. So it's 9:45, and this parent comes in with his like 6-year-old son, and he's like, "Oh, so sorry you missed class last week." But this is week 3, so already this guy doesn't realize, like, his kid's already missed 2 of the first classes, and he doesn't even realize it. Like, this, it's 9:45, so he's, like, talking to me, introducing me to the kid. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm, like, clearly meeting with this other teacher. None of the lights are on in the theater. Like, we're not open. So I'm like, oh, just so you know, the class is actually 10:30 to 11:30, not 10 o'clock. And he, like, looks at his watch. He's like, oh, okay, well, I'll tell his mom that, but, like, I gotta go now. So then he looks at his 6-year-old son, 9:45, he looks at his 6-year-old son and says, okay, Renee, can you find something to do here can you entertain yourself for the next half hour, 45 minutes?
Oh, God.
So this dude ditches his 6-year-old with me. I'm trying to have a meeting. Obviously, this kid cannot entertain himself because he proceeds to tell me all the jokes he knows while I'm trying to have a business meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. So mostly just, I hate parents who, like, that's so negligent, like, to just drop your kid off with some random lady, like, 45 minutes before the class. And I don't get paid for that shit.
I always like to do this then after we just vent a little bit, just take a nice breathe in. Fuck people. But Cassie, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I love discussing just improv and sketch and all types of things. Did you want to plug your show again? You guys
come
are
check
performing.
out Dang Judy Dench, DAAANG, Judy with I, Dang Judy Dench. You can check us out on Facebook, but we've got a show in CIF on May 5th, 7:30 at Second City's Beat Lounge.
Awesome. So yeah, guys, go check her out with that. Check out Lake Effect on YouTube and stay tuned. You know, maybe in the next few months, maybe Cassie and her group and I can collaborate on something again.
Yeah.
Maybe another live show. We'll have to see. Thanks again, Cassie.
Thanks
we'll
for
have to
having me.
have you on again.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. See you guys. All right.